this tutorial we're going to be having a look at how to manage a workspace a little more effectively, but more importantly how to manage the layers that we're working in. Now, the layout of Photoshop can be managed to look different depending on our own preferences and also the kind of job that we're going to be doing. So very often I prefer personally to work with this layers menu down here a little bit more obvious. Now notice you've got this adjustments area, there are tabs to move to masks, we can look at this area for channels, paths, layers. Photoshop does many things, and at first some of this might not be even visible to you. So a couple of things that we could do. At the top here we have different views. So Essentials brings up, depending on how the computer's been used previously, usually focusing on this adjustments area. If we go into Design, this is a quite handy view as it focuses on layers and then characters and paragraphing in terms of manipulating text. That's quite a good default view. And if you can go through, you can see this double arrow takes us into all sorts of areas. So we could go into photography, which is some very specific things here, or you can even create your own new workspace and save that. What I'll show you is how to perhaps make a greater focus on layers. So I'm actually going to left click and hold this layers tab and drop it up into this main middle window. So we can see here I've now got adjustments, so I can move to masks, or I can bring layers up, and layers is a nice large area. I can even left click and hold that double arrow by hovering in between the two areas to create a large layers area. So what are layers? When you create a new text, or new document rather, it normally defaults to white and a layer called background. So essentially that's our background layer. Background layers have certain rules about the way they work, and they come pre-locked. So using them for what it actually says is the most useful thing. So for example, filling with a colour, I'm going to leave mine white. I've then brought in different layers in a different order. Each layer sits above the previous one, so I've clicked this square button with the iron to make my runner visible. The runner sits on top of the white background. If I bring up this graphic and actually move it across, you can see that that sits above the runner. Now if I was to left click this layer and drag it underneath, there we go, that's better, it will sit under the runner. And there's my sports day text, which I might line up there. Now obviously this is getting a bit busy here with the text and the t-shirt, so I'm actually going to lift that graphic layer underneath there so it's all working together. Now a couple of things that we should do. If we bring new objects in or create new things, we get layer 1, layer 2 as our names. So I'm going to double click into there and type in blue circle so I know exactly what it is. The T tells me this is a text layer, Sports Day 2014. It defaults to what you write in. That's useful, so I'm going to leave that. Runner is runner, background is background. Now when you're doing a complex piece, you might end up with 50 or more layers, so naming them is very important. We can also group them. So this text, Sports Day, and the blue circle, I want to live together. So I'm going to click on Sports Day, making it blue, and then go to this folder icon. It says Group 1. I can now drag the two things that I want to be in that group together, and I can open and close that group depending on how I want to view it. So if I'm not editing it, I can close it up. I can move that whole group up and down the layer menu to position it in terms of the vertical stacking. I'm also going to give it a title so I know what it is. So your Photoshop layers area may end up being a series of folders and separate layers depending on how complex it gets. So that's a very important way to think about managing your layers. The last bit we'll look at are these extra menus here. These can be added to through the window option. Now, because things can be docked and undocked, or made to disappear or appear in different ways, so for example I could end up with that there, this over here, and so on and so forth, and you might think, hang on, everything's all over the place, what do I do? This Windows menu is really useful. I can go to Workspace and reset Essentials. So it's gone back to where I was before. I can drop my layers back up here and it starts to feel more familiar again. So if you accidentally drag things around, that's one way. As you can see here, I've reset it, so some of these menus have disappeared here. So I'd like my character back, which allows me to have some more text things. It automatically brings paragraph in with it. And then as you become more used to what's going on in here, you might think, okay, history, well, history is already on there. We'll have a close look at that in a second. You may decide that you want a paths menu and so on. So this Windows menu will bring in further elements of Photoshop for you to use once you are familiar with what you would like to use. However, I'm going to go to this one here. This is really useful. This is a history. Photoshop defaults to 20 moves in terms of remembering what you've done and undone. So I can go back through here and it will go back to a defined point. So you may recognize that earlier on within this tutorial the text looked like that. So if you've done a few moves that you don't like, you can go back through those, which is a pretty useful area. So to summarize, we've had a look at naming layers and moving them up and down to get our order. We've grouped them using this folder icon. We've also manipulated this view to focus on layers in the middle by moving tabs around. We've had a look at window and workspace resetting, and we've also looked at adding elements and menus into this column here.